Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by headliners on TV, radio and online. This is GB News. Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's 9 o'clock on television, on radio and online in the United Kingdom and across the world. This is Mark Dolan Tonight. Coming up in My Big Opinion, my reflections on Boris Johnson's departure. A talented but flawed character, his report card is a mixed one. So, overall, is it a thumbs up or a thumbs down? Find out shortly. My Mark Meets guest is the international best-selling author of a new self-help book that says you can do 20% of the work and achieve 80% of the results. What's not to like? It's the book everyone's talking about, and it might just change your life. Find out why before the end of the hour. It might take at 10. You don't have to wait for the judge. I'll be giving my verdict on Prince Harry's needless war against the British press, and I won't be pulling my punches. He's going down. Plus, the Queen of Clean, Kim Woodburn, will tell us if Brits really need heat alerts from the government. And it's Saturday night, so that means the brilliant Kinsey Schofield live from LA. Is Donald Trump really facing 100 years in prison? You heard me right. Lots to get through. It's been a hot day, so please get loads of beers in the fridge, and I'll see you after the headlines with Aaron Armstrong.
Good evening to you. It's a minute past 9, Aaron Armstrong here in the GB Newsroom. The Prime Minister is facing calls for a general election following the announcement of a third Tory resignation. Nigel Adams, the MP for Selby and Ainsty, says he's standing down with immediate effect, triggering a third by-election in 24 hours. Boris Johnson announced his resignation yesterday after seeing in advance a report from the committee investigating whether he misled Parliament. The ex-Culture Secretary Nadine Dorries followed hours earlier. Shadow Deputy Leader Angela Rayner says it's time for Boris Johnson to take responsibility for his actions.
Privileges Committee, a well-respected committee that are made up majority of Tory MPs, and he's just tried to trash them and say, I've got no responsibility, I've done nothing wrong. He's a man that can never hold his hands up to what he's done, and I think it's an absolute disgrace, and, you know, good riddance. He shouldn't have been in Parliament in the first place.
Donald Trump's described his indictment as a witch hunt and a series of criminal charges against him as ridiculous and baseless. In his first public appearance since the charges were announced, Trump told the Republican North Carolina convention it amounts to election interference. The former president is facing 37 criminal charges relating to mishandling classified documents and keeping them in various rooms in his Florida home.
They've launched one hoax and witch hunt after another to try and stop our movement and thwart the will of the American people. Every time you have, not even believable. Witch hunt, scam, hoax. It's called election interference, and they're doing the best they can with it.
A 16-year-old boy has been charged with 2 counts of attempted murder and 1 count of GBH following an attack at a private school in Devon. Police who were called to Blundell School in Tiverton around 1 o'clock yesterday morning say 3 people, including 2 students, sustained multiple serious injuries. 1 boy is in a critical condition. The other is understood to be serious but stable. A second man's been arrested in connection with the disappearance of a woman in County Antrim. The 21-year-old Chloe Mitchell was last seen in Ballymena a week ago. Around 80 volunteers with the Community Rescue Service have been involved in a major search of the area. Teams have been concentrating on the banks of the River Braid. A 34-year-old's being questioned after a 26-year-old man was arrested in Lurgan on Thursday. And the second half of the Champions League final is just getting underway in Istanbul. These expectant Manchester City fans are hoping to see their side complete an historic treble. City are playing Inter Milan, and I'm just looking for a score update for you. It remains 0-0. If City do manage to go on and beat their Italian rivals, they'll complete an historic treble, thereby adding the European title to the Premier League and FA Cup. They're missing key player Kevin De Bruyne, though he's off injured in the first half. If City win, they'll just become the second English team after Manchester United to complete the treble. That's it for the moment. We're on TV, online, DAB and TuneIn Radio. But now, do stay hydrated, and let's get back to Mark.
My thanks to the well-oiled Aaron Armstrong. Welcome to a hot and sunny Mark Dolan tonight. Coming up this evening. In my big opinion, my reflections on Boris Johnson's departure. A talented but flawed character, his report card is a mixed one. So, overall, is it a thumbs up or a thumbs down? Find out shortly. In the big story, as the country swelters, do Brits really need heat alerts from the government? I'll be asking TV star and the Queen of Clean, Kim Woodburn. Plus, she'll be giving her forthright views on Holly Willoughby's return to the This Morning sofa. And let me tell you, sparks will fly. My Mark Meets guest is the international best-selling author of a brand new self-help book that says you can do 20% of the work and achieve 80% of the results. What's not to like? It's the book everyone's talking about, and it might just change your life. Find out why before the end of the hour. In my Take at 10, you don't have to wait for the judge. I'll be giving my verdict on Prince Harry's needless war against the British press. I won't be pulling my punches, folks. He's going down. Does Donald Trump really face 100 years in jail? I'll be asking tonight's newsmaker, the Queen of US showbiz, royal and political reporting, Kinsey Schofield. And Mark Dolan tonight is the home of the papers, with tomorrow's front pages from 10:30, with 3 top pundits who haven't been told what to say and who don't follow the script. Tonight, Sajila Kershi, Chris Wilde and Ashleen Horgan-Wallace. Tonight I'll be asking the pundits, are Tesco ripping off club card customers? Are unions right that workers should be given days off when the weather gets too warm? And as Glastonbury ban e-cigarettes, are vapes a social menace? Plus your emails, especially the spicy ones, mark@gbnews.com. And this programme has a golden rule, especially on a Saturday night. We don't do boring. Not on my watch. I just won't have it. Lots to get through. Let's start with my big opinion. It's the end of the affair. Well, it's sort of the end of the affair. The human firework that is Boris Johnson may have lit up the sky for the last time, and in the end, he has done more good than bad. But whilst his political reign was mesmeric, exciting, compelling, and at times hilarious, the lingering aftertaste is one of an historic opportunity squandered and a great talent unfulfilled. There are plenty of positives, many of which will have lingering historic significance. With his stunning and unexpected 2019 landslide victory, Boris kept Jeremy Corbyn out of number 10. Corbyn, someone who presided over a horrific culture of anti-Semitism in his party and failed to condemn Russia over the Salisbury attack. A Corbyn government would have been an economic and national security disaster for this country. In an interview prior to the election, Jeremy Corbyn refused to say whether he would deploy Britain's nuclear weapons if this country were under attack. With his victory in 2019, Boris Johnson spared us 5 years of hard-left ideology and saw the Labour Party return to some form of sanity. And Boris got Brexit done. Yes, he really did. Now, I know Brexit supporters feel it's a compromise, with Northern Ireland thrown under the bus, and with many EU rules and regulations still in place. But the deal that he struck in 2020, a comprehensive free trade agreement with the EU, which we were told was not possible, ended the Brexit deadlock. It's down to Boris and Boris alone that we are out. To have prevaricated and delayed on our departure, watered it down, or even reversed it, which many wanted, well, that would have sparked, in my view, a democratic crisis in this country and possible disorder on the streets. Love it or hate it, Brexit had to happen because people voted for it. That is how democracy works. As he did with London, Boris sparked a feel-good factor across the nation with an ever-positive view of what we can achieve. This wasn't blind optimism, this was well-founded. Britain, the fifth largest economy in the world, has quite clearly shrugged off the short to medium-term impacts of Brexit, impacts which only a fool would deny. We have boasted the highest growth in the G7 for the last 2 years and signed a flurry of free trade deals. And whilst Germany and the Eurozone descend into recession, we have avoided one. How ironic that Germany, the ideological and economic capital of the EU, should be facing higher food inflation than us and are expected to sit at the bottom of the growth league table in the G7, below, you guessed it, Brexit Britain. Boris was right to sell a positive vision of this country because Britain is a global beacon of diversity, innovation, creativity, commerce and enterprise. It doesn't fit the narrative to point out that London retains the top European slot for attracting foreign investment in financial services. And Britain is the most attractive country in the whole of Europe to invest in a startup. The list goes on. Now, there is damage from Brexit. Businesses are struggling with red tape and some are hurting. This must be resolved. So there will be bumps in the road for Brexit Britain, of which Boris is the co-author. But in the end, I'm certain that we will go from strength to strength. But. It's abundantly clear that the 80-seat majority and the chance to change Britain for good, forever, was lost amid the chaos of one self-inflicted political scandal after another. And it's my view that although the Partygate story has been wildly overcooked via a press and a House of Commons who loathe Boris because of Brexit, in the end, Johnson ran a chaotic number 10, which inflicted incredibly stupid rules on the British public, which he and his colleagues flagrantly ignored. Why did they ignore the rules? Well, because they knew it was bollocks. Which takes me to the pandemic and Boris's greatest sin, folding to the doom-mongers of Sage by inflicting three national lockdowns on the country. A Conservative Prime Minister whose reaction to a nasty but predominantly mild respiratory virus was to give us communism 2.0, closing once viable businesses, shutting schools and paying perfectly healthy people to stay at home. He masked our faces on evidence flimsier than the devices themselves, and he presided over vaccine tyranny. Given they didn't stop infection or transmission, no one has ever successfully explained to me why we needed to vaccinate perfectly healthy people. I still await an answer. I've always credited Boris for Freedom Day, in which he led Europe out of restrictions, but it was too little too late. It was in January 2022 that the Mail on Sunday reported it was only the intervention of Rishi Sunak, Lord Frost and Jacob Rees-Mogg which stopped Boris Johnson cancelling Christmas in December 2021 with yet more ruinous restrictions, contradicting any vision we may have had of Boris as a true libertarian or lover of freedom. Yes, Sunak wrote the cheques, but Boris Johnson was PM and presided over the borrowing of hundreds of billions of pounds, for which we're now paying a mighty price, not just in terms of inflation and the cost of living, but a deeply poorer and more indebted country. Boris bangs on about how much he loves freedom, but he stuck to the COVID narrative throughout. I'm sorry, but there's no point having principles if you don't lead by them. Boris showed great leadership on Ukraine, and I believe that history will judge this flawed but talented character less harshly than many are today. But in the end, Boris isn't really about the Conservative Party. He's not really about the country. Boris is about Boris. He's the charming narcissist with his own agenda, doing anything and saying anything that serves not the national interest, but the Boris interest. He even decided on Brexit with the toss of a coin and judging the mood of a party which he sought to lead. Now, is there a way back for the blonde bombshell? Never say never. But if a movie has left you disappointed, it's unlikely the sequel will be much better. OK, folks, well, what's your reaction to that? Mark at gbnews.com. Have I been too harsh on Boris Johnson? I think it's a mixed scorecard. Let me know your thoughts. Let's get reaction now from my fantastic pundits tonight. And I'm delighted to have with me comedian Sajila Kershi, back on the show. Lovely to see you again. Author and campaigner for Children in Care, Chris Wilde, and reality star and entrepreneur Aisling Horgan-Wallace. Great to have all three of you with us. Chris, your reaction to the departure of Boris Johnson?
Listen, good politicians don't always make great leaders, and this is living proof with Boris. And do you know what bothers me more than anything? We act shocked. This is a man who 3 years ago said investing in historical child abuse is spoffing money up the wall. This is a man whose life is based in omnipotence. He walks the streets with this pontification profile whilst other people are suffering. So his departure for me is a blessing. It's long overdue, and I think now it's time to get on with real politics. Old school politics is dead. Boris is the last of that menacing elitist who have ruined this country. So for me, it's great news. We can start looking forward into the future. But I think what he's done is, what does bother me, I have a 10-year-old girl, and even she's aware of just how bad the economy is because of his leadership. And I think in 100 years from now, people will be studying this. They will be studying this time in history, looking at ways not to rule countries, not to lead. I think he's destroyed the Conservatives. They won't get into power again for the next 50 years. That's how I feel on this.
Well, I take Chris's points, but I still think that history will judge Boris more kindly than people are today, Aisling, because he got Brexit done, he ended the deadlock and fulfilled a democratic mandate. I think there would have been disorder on the streets if that hadn't happened.
He was the only one that could do it.
And he kept Jeremy Corbyn out at number 10. For me, that's enough. That's enough of a positive legacy. What's your view looking back?
Well, looking back, until I heard what you just told me that he said about child abuse, which I had no idea about, to be fair. He's a hero of mine. I love him. I think he's great. He delivered on what nobody else could deliver with Brexit. And he was, we've got to remember, he delivered on something that the public wanted. So he's not perfect. I'm not saying he's perfect. I'm not saying all his actions are perfect. But did we all keep to the rules in lockdown 100%? I know I didn't.
Sajila, Boris Johnson.
Well, I kept to all the rules. I'll have you know it. I feel outraged.
Well, more for you. You had.
To say he's flawed is a bit of an understatement. I mean, he's so colourful. I think it's the right thing that he went. He's doing a bit of a Trump, like blaming, everybody else. But it was the right thing, and I think it might be engineered from Rishi's camp, which I don't think is a bad thing, because I think all politicians are the same. I think
Do you not think he's been bullied out a little bit?
They're all toxic. The Tories right now are really
Absolutely.
toxic. Less get me in the jungle, more get people out of the urban and concrete jungles that need help. That's what my feeling is. I think we've got too much personalities, and people are saying that Rishi is boring. I think we need a bit of boring. We need a bit of boring. I'm done with the personalities. Stop trying to be superstars.
I do feel like Boris has been been sort of bullied quite...
Yeah, but
Oh, he's not. He's
what you're
bully
doing?
himself.
What you're doing is you're using Brexit as a facade to cover up everything bad he's done in his legacy, and that's not right.
Well, he saved a lady that was being mugged in Camden, and I just can't get over it. I just cannot not love him.
Marie is a fan. She's emailed the show. Mark, he will be back. Boris can do no wrong. I look forward to seeing him in number 10 once again. This from Megan. Hi, Mark. Absolutely right. Boris is a narcissist with a good brain, but a chaotic personality. Sunak is intelligent, considered, knows what good business is, and has an ordered personal life. He'll get there. He's got 18 months. Megan there, making it sound like a prison sentence, which in some ways it is. Sunak is a fake, says Neil. If you believe Sunak tried to stop lockdown or supported Brexit, you will believe anything. And last but not least for now, Marion. Boris was shafted. He was definitely forced out. It was all a big coup between Rishi Sunak and the other Remainer sympathisers in the Conservative Party. They threw Boris Johnson under the bus. I will never vote Conservative again. Marion, thank you for that. Keep those emails coming. On Twitter, we asked, would you vote for a new political party led by Boris Johnson? I'll give you the results of that after this.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the people's channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The people's channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me.
So anyway...
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News. Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There'll be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
OK, now on Twitter, I asked you if Boris Johnson starts a new party, will you vote for it? 61.8% said yes. 38.2% said no. And let's get to your emails briefly, if I can. mark@gbnews.com. How about this in regards to my big opinion on Boris Johnson and his legacy? Richard says, Mark, Boris seemed to take the red wall vote for granted and indulge in a self-absorbed Oxbridge them and us culture at number 10. I think this was the virus of his downfall. Emily says, hi, Mark, the problem with Boris is he wasn't always honest. And if all this Partygate madness wasn't picked up, his political career would still be going on and he would still be Prime Minister. Howard says, Mark, I'm constantly hearing about Boris Johnson's 80-seat majority and his failure despite this. However, people are forgetting that many in his own party were and are Remainer backstabbers who opposed virtually everything the man wanted to do. I'll get to more of your emails shortly, mark@gbnews.com. But it's time now for the big story, and health chiefs have upgraded a yellow alert for the weekend to an amber heat health alert in 5 regions, as the Met Office said temperatures could hit a scorching 30 degrees centigrade this weekend. But do we really need these health alerts? Is this government overreach and an insult to most Brits who can exercise common sense? Let's speak to the Queen of Common Sense, TV star and unrelenting dropper of truth bombs, Kim Woodburn. Kim, what do you think about this?
Right. I must get my breath, dear, OK? Are you OK? I hope so. How are you? Go on. Now, what do I think about it? I've made a joke then, you know. Now, I'll tell you what I think about it. I think we don't need to be reminded by anybody else. We have our radio, we have our telephones, we have the television, we have the newspapers. Who else has to remind us the weather's going to be warm? We've plenty of coverage. Don't be silly. It's just more expense, not needed. We've got everything at our fingertips to know what the weather's doing for the next few days. Stop being so silly.
Well, no, and Kim, you've survived plenty of hot summers.
Not with you, sad to say, dear, but I'm hoping. No, but on a serious note, of course you do. You know, when I was a little kid, we had an old rotten wooden radio. You had to slap it to get it to go. We had no telly, so really we didn't know what was happening. Look what we've got today, my lovely. You know immediately, the lovely weather girls say you've got your newspapers, you've got your telephones, you've got everything. Radio broadcasts the weather all day. Television. Why do we need other reminders, dear? Have we got not something else to think about, dear, but that rubbish? We've plenty of reminders. We're jolly lucky. Why do we want more idiots going in for this lot?
I completely agree, treating us like children. Now, Kim, Marks & Spencer have removed use-by dates from their milk, instead encouraging customers to use a sniff test to judge whether it's gone sour. In a bid to cut waste, the retailer will instead use best before dates on cartons from this week, urging shoppers to use their own judgment. It's warned that around 500 million pints worth almost 300 million quid are poured down the drain in the UK every year, usually because the milk has passed its use-by date. As the Queen of Clean and an expert on hygiene, what's your view on these use-by dates?
My loves, don't buy too much milk. I see people in the supermarket, it's very reasonable price, you know it is. You see them buying 3 or 4 huge, unless you've got a family of 30. Buy 1, dear, or even 2. It won't go off you regularly drinking tea and having your cereals. But don't stock up on milk, love, it's there at hand. And I don't agree when they say sniff to see if it's gone off. Come along, dear, put the right dates on. They're covering their sides, they're covering their backsides, so we won't tell you when you shouldn't use it by, but you can sniff it. Oh, good for their sales, dear, but no good for us wasting milk. Don't buy as much, my loves. Keep it in a well-operated fridge between 3 and 5 degrees and you'll be fine. But you see shelves of it at home, my love. Buy it as you need it, truthfully. You know what you use in a couple of days, how many kids you've got. Don't overbuy. There's always plenty on the shelves. But sniff it and see if it's gone off. Behave yourselves. Just behave, for heaven's sake.
Now, Kim, we will definitely obey your instruction to behave. Did Holly Willoughby behave this week? She returned to the This Morning sofa. What's your appraisal of her comeback?
Well, you missed the gag. I rehearsed this one.
Well, can you do it again? Right. Can you do it again for us? It was an excellent impression of Holly Willoughby.
Right. Let's get my breath. I hope you're all well. I really hope so. I mean, it was
uncanny.
Cute, wouldn't it?
What did you think about that opening statement and asking the British people whether we were okay?
Like it? Sorry?
What did you think about her opening statement? It was so strange. It was strange, wasn't it?
It's a marvellous acting job, isn't it? Look, you must understand this. I don't understand what's going on. I'm sure you don't. You see, quickly I'll say this. If Philip Schofield has had sex with a man of the correct age, then he shouldn't be sacked. We don't know this is an underage person, so why does Holly care and say, why does she care? Until we can establish if it was a man of the correct age, he's done nothing wrong. So what is all this about? And Holly Willoughby, the show itself was a horrible atmosphere. I went on there 3 or 4 times, and other people have. The atmosphere is shocking with those two. You can't put your finger on it. They're both cocky. She sits there, I've got the world at my feet. There's nothing you can do can offend me. That's Holly. He's there giving dig and being very rude. And several people that have been on, lovely people, much more placid than me, have said, Kim, you go on that set, you feel awful. The atmosphere is shocking. It's shocking. He's rude and nasty, but it doesn't let her off the hook, Mark. For years she has sat there and heard him be extremely rude to people that were rather sad people. And she doesn't ever say, Philip, I don't think I agree with that, in any way to defend that poor person that's nearly in tears. So she's aided and abetted him. She's equally as bad as him. Why is she still working?
Do you think that her career will, Kim, do you think her career will survive this drama?
No, I don't think it can, because I tell you what I think, that, business. She didn't fool anybody. I mean, 90% of people said, oh, please, Holly, stop this nonsense. You didn't survive on that show for all those years, aiding and abetting Phil. I've seen you, dear, when I was on the show one morning, and you walked past me, and I've been on the show, through the door, and a young man said an autograph, and you puffed him off with your hand and got into your car. You're not sweetness and light, dear. You never had a word to say thanks for coming on the show. You shot past me like a bat out of hell. This girl is not a sweet little soul. She's a crafty, money-making madam. She's made her money. Get off.
Finally, Kim, many of my viewers and listeners will be struggling with the heat tonight. So as an expert on home furnishings and matters of the bedroom, how do you think we can keep cool in the bedroom tonight?
Well, if you were there, dear, I couldn't. If you and I were together, there'd be no hope, dear. Because I have heard about you, dear. Sure. We'll go in. I'll speak to you privately after on your phone. No, look, for heaven's sake, opens, because when it gets dark, the air does sometimes go cooler. Try your bedroom window, see if you're getting any cool in. You might be getting a bit in. Draw back those curtains. If you're getting any in, for heaven's sake, have it in. If you've got little fans, don't use a big expensive ones. You can buy the tiniest ones. You can plug in. They don't burn much. They throw out a lot of cool, And if you feel like making love, forget it, dear. You'll have to be starved of affection, because the heat won't cope, dear. I mean, I'm a hot-blooded woman, but even I couldn't cope, dear. And I know Mark, he knows me. He couldn't cope either, dear. I know, I'm telling you.
What a party pooper you are. Well, you were red hot tonight. Kim Woodburn will catch up again soon. My thanks to the brilliant Kim Woodburn, tonight's guest on The Big Story. Listen, what do you think? Do we need those health alerts to say that it's going to be quite warm this weekend? Mark at gbnews.com. Now, we are half an hour away from my take at 10, in which I'll be giving my verdict on the Prince Harry trial, his needless war against the media. Don't wait for the judge. I will pronounce my views at 10 o'clock. And let me just give you a little clue. He's going down. Coming up next with my brilliant pundits, are Tesco ripping off club card customers? Are unions right that workers should be given days off when the weather gets too warm? And as Glastonbury ban e-cigarettes, are vapes a social menace? All of that to come.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, no, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the people's channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
is the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better.
Crop failures, famine, war, suffering on a scale completely unimaginable.
We are putting the cart before the horse. As Charles I said at the scaffold, he was the true defender of liberty.
Yeah, I've completely derailed the conversation.
Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
The Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real, robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Welcome back to the show. I will get to your emails very shortly, but reacting to the big stories of the day, my fantastic pundits tonight. We have comedian Sajila Kershi, author and campaigner for Children in Care, Chris Wilde, and reality star and entrepreneur Aisling Horgan-Wallace. Now, Tesco could be breaking the law over how it displays club card prices, according to the consumer group Which. Apparently, Tesco does not display the unit price of deals clearly enough, making it hard for shoppers to determine the cheapest product. So, do you feel ripped off as a club card customer? Any club card owners here? Yes. All 3 of you, right? Yeah. Aisling, you seem very, very enthusiastic.
Yeah, because I just think that they probably bulk buy and lead us to their bargains. You have to have the time and the capacity to be able to look around, and because sometimes even on the shelf below of the special offers, there's the same product, similar product that's cheaper. Yeah. So it's a big annoyance for me.
Yeah, and I think the idea, and I looked into this, Sajila, the fact is that let's say you buy a pint of milk, it'll be cheaper with club card.
Yeah.
But what isn't so clear is that 2 pints, like a litre, could be cheaper than the club card price because per mil, it's less money.
Yeah. Can I just say, I was today years old before I found out that this was a thing. I can't believe I've been ripped off. I'm disappointed, Tesco's. I'm very disappointed. I feel very let down because I got rubbish eyesight, so I naturally go straight to the...
Yeah, that's what they do, the big yellow sign, so you just think that's instinctively...
And then I think I'm going to get more points as well, but actually... We have been conning customers and consumers since the cost of living anyway. Like crisps, they've got less crisps in the same amount of money you're paying, but they just reduced the crisps in there. Haribo sweets, not that I've noticed
bad
myself.
stuff.
Not that I've tested myself. But the thing is, it's like, you know, what next? They're going to have less... like Jaffa.
All the bad stuff.
Bits and the Jaffa cakes. Like, you know, it's...
Do you know what it is?
Can't have less Jaffa.
Yeah. Do you know what it is as well? I think we're all victims of blind shopping, and just to elaborate on that, is I go in, I'd grab milk and bread, I'm thinking, I've spent 30 quid there.
Correct.
You don't think... I don't have time to get units out on my calculator thinking, right, which one is the best deal here?
Yeah. You're on autopilot around the shopping aisles, aren't you?
Especially when you've got kids. You ain't got time to look at you. No. You know, I don't know what you spend.
Well, you should, because you can save a fortune.
Of course.
I do it.
I think I'm going to defend Tesco slightly because, I mean, I'm a Tesco customer and I I do find that most of the club card deals will save you money. And I think they've been got on a technicality here from which the fact is that, yes, if it's a different volume, then it might work out cheaper. But that's often the case. If it's a bigger bottle of milk, then it probably will be cheaper per the thing. I'm sure they'll correct it slightly. They've defended themselves and said we've done nothing wrong. They're not happy with the comments of which, by the way. One other issue is the fact that Tesco are going to reduce the value of club card points, which is probably the bigger headache. And a lot of my viewers and listeners are really unhappy about that.
And you've only got
do you not read the papers?
I've been reading the papers, but I don't know about this Tesco scandal.
Yeah, and you've only got a certain amount of time to use them at the full value, so check it out when you leave the show.
Right. Yeah, that's right. They're about to become slightly less valuable. Again, to defend Tesco, some of the other supermarkets have reduced the value of their loyalty schemes as well. But I think it's a big mistake. So, Tesco, please think again. After all, every little helps. Now, a union boss has said workers should be allowed to clock off early or even work from home when temperatures hit 25 degrees. According to one particular boss, working at high temperatures causes issues with heat stress, dehydration and exhaustion. So are unions right that workers should be given days off or allowed to work at home when it gets hot? Sajila.
I think they are right, because they wouldn't have just made this up from nowhere. They would have followed health and safety procedures.
And that's the problem.
That's the problem.
But we've been going out as a species. We've been working in unbelievable heat for centuries.
I know.
And now suddenly we've got to go home.
I know, and I do have a clause in my contract that the moment I start sweating, nay, glowing, that I must start.
You're like Prince Andrew. You don't sweat, do you?
I don't sweat.
You glow.
I glow. Yeah. I think if it's health and safety, it depends, because obviously if how hot is dangerous, because children get kept off school when it's too hot.
It depends on what environment you're working in.
The only excuse for closing a school in relation to weather is snow and ice. Otherwise, I would keep offices open, I would keep factories open, I would keep schools open. We have just gone so soft.
But we had people passing out today. The soldier
well, of course, they're
people
wearing these woolly hats.
Yeah.
But
listen, you speak
about that later.
You speak from a different sense. If you go on the wards, let's say you go on the wards at Chase Farm, the mental health wards, they're so hot. It's like being in an institution, and you think these people are there. They don't get that luxury to work from home.
Exactly.
So I think we've got to be careful about who, what sector of people.
It'd be like the pandemic. Some people have the luxury of working from home, others not, and they've got to put a shift in.
Oh, that's how it is. But
that's how the cookie crumbles.
That's how the cookie crumbles.
Are we unevolving as a species that we can't handle a bit of heat?
But we've got to think about what's happening with global warming. I'm not going to get political about this, but it's getting hotter.
But I didn't realise you'd gone woke.
Wild's gone woke. Wild's gone woke.
How did you slip through the GB News net? I'm trying to filter out the wokies. No, I'm only pulling your leg. I mean, you feel that the weather that we're experiencing, the hotter summers, you think that's related to climate change?
I do. I absolutely do. I'm from Yorkshire. You come out your door or Ireland, it was full of snow. We haven't seen that in London for 20 years. There's pure evidence there to show that there is a problem with climate. And I think it is getting hot. Look at last year. We had that one day where everybody was passing out. I've never witnessed that in 43 years on this planet.
Can I just say, though, it's legit, like the heat. It's just a problem when we live in the UK and we're working. It's not a problem when we go on holiday and we have the same temperature.
Well, yeah, because you're in a bikini on holiday, walking around half naked.
That's a slam dunk argument there. I mean, the issue is also we're talking about 30 degrees here. I mean, it's not exactly the sort of the desert, is it?
It depends what job you're doing. Look, it's common sense. If you've got thick overalls on and you're outside in an outside job, then of course it's going to be too hot and you should go home.
I've got viewers and listeners in their 50s and 60s, and they'll be horrified to hear about this because they remember the 70s and 80s and they just sweated through their summers.
I don't believe it was quite as hot. I really don't. There's evidence to show that it wasn't.
I mean, there's an open debate about climate change, but we did have the famous summer of 76. Which I guess all of you are too young to remember.
a lady on the plane...
About 35, 40 degrees.
Well, a lady on the plane that I was on today, because I took a plane from Marrakesh just to be on your show, Mark. No. She fainted because it was too hot. So it is a serious issue.
Well, listen, I don't know, folks, I need some help here. Are we going soft, people wanting days off because it's a little bit toasty in the office? Do me a favour. Last but not least, Glastonbury have told people not to bring disposable e-cigarettes as they pollute the environment. Vapes were on the do not bring list alongside knives and non-biodegradable body glitter. Oh, no, I'm covered in that today. Underneath this shirt. Well, so therefore, it begs a question very simply. Are vapes, these e-cigarettes, a social menace? What do you think, Aisling?
I despise them. I didn't mind them until I went on holiday. As I say, I've just come back, and my friend had a vape, and every morning in bed, vaping, everywhere we went, even secretly on the plane. Oh, I probably shouldn't have said that, but everywhere it's vape,
That's
vape,
banned
vape,
by
vape.
Ryanair.
Yeah. Oh, first class, darling. That's a lie. So, yeah, they're disgusting. You're breathing in somebody else's second-hand smoke, the smell, not to mention what it does to the environment. There's batteries in them. They're not easily recycled. They're not easily
a lot of them are
disposed of. I hate them.
I was quite shocked.
Yeah, they're all single use.
Yeah.
Most of them are single use.
Do you get some of them are refillable or not?
Some of them, but most people, like my friend on holiday, was opening a new one every day.
And it looks like a lighter, doesn't it? It's a piece of plastic.
Here's the debate, right?
It's terrible.
Here's the debate.
environment.
When you work with young people, I'd rather see them vaping than smoking cannabis or cigarettes.
We don't know the long-term effects yet.
anything.
Well,
nothing.
No options.
I don't know if it's there is an argument as well to say, but there is evidence to show. But it does do something
It encourages
psychological. It
kids.
kind of calms you down. Cigarettes are, I don't know. It doesn't bother me as such, Mark. It doesn't bother me.
For you, it's the lesser of several other evils.
It is, yeah, of course. It's better than taking drugs and smoking cannabis, of course.
I still think, though, like vaping for kids is like we're heading towards a problem.
Yeah, it's terrible.
And I do think there should be an age limit on who can buy it because they're targeting vaping towards children.
Well, vaping is attractive to children because of the colours, the smells, the flavours. It's terrible.
Well, look, what do you think? Are vapes a social menace? Let me know, Mark at gbnews.com. We are just 15 minutes away now from my take at 10. Don't wait for the judge. I'm giving my verdict on Prince Harry. And here's a clue. He's going down. You won't want to miss that, let me tell you. I'm not pulling my punches. But coming up next, my Mark Meets guest is very exciting. The international best-selling author of a brand new self-help book that says you can do 20% of the work and achieve 80% of the results. What's not to like? It's the book everyone's talking about, and it might just change your life. That's next.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference. And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prison.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed. So I guess they've always been quite woke. That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News. The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
How lucky am I? I've got two Bettys emailing me. Betty C says, Mark, on Boris Johnson, agree with him or not, this is dangerous. This is an action of putting out someone who got the vote. And Mark, stop saying Brexit is done when Northern Ireland has been screwed the way it has. Stop with the lies, says Betty. But Betty Spry says in relation to heat alerts and workers going home when it gets a bit toasty, we're getting ridiculous, says Betty. Time off if it's too hot, time off if it's too cold, time off just because you feel like it. As a child in the 50s, our school theatre broke, so we sat in the classroom with our coats on. Nobody died, says Betty. Listen, thank you so much for that. It's time Brits knuckled down and worked instead of whinging about everything. Thank you for that. Keep those emails coming. mark@gbnews.com. It's time for this. Yes, it's time for Mark Meets and one of the best-selling self-help authors in the world, Richard Koch, the author of the 80-20 principle, which has a very positive message that you can achieve 80% of the things you want in life with 20% of the time and effort. His latest hit book is Unreasonable Success and How to Achieve It, which talks about the 9 secrets behind people who changed the world. And he's got 2 more books about his 80-20 philosophy on the way. Brilliant stuff. Richard Koch, welcome to Mark Dolan tonight. And let's start with one of the most stunning statistics in all of your books, that 20% of our time accounts for 80% of the work we accomplish. How does that work and why is that the case?
Well, it's an observation. I mean, the 80-20 principle is not a magic formula. I'm not trying to sell something that doesn't work. It's an observation, and it has been clear that time is not time when it comes to results. That actually some of the time that we spend is enormously valuable, and some of the time, in fact, most of the time that we spend is a waste of time. If 20% of the work we do gives us 80% of the value, and a number of studies have validated this in all sorts of different areas, then it can't be true. It just cannot be true that hard work makes sense. And it's in the culture. You know, the Protestant ethic is probably the strongest thing that's going. And yet, you know, we have to do it. Many of us have to do it because that's the way that organizations go. But it's stupid. You think about the small amount of time that any discovery takes to invent relative to the value. So Alexander Fleming, for example, you know, made a mistake. He didn't leave his laboratory correct, and the following morning, there it was. There was penicillin, the first antibiotic, which has saved millions, tens of millions, probably hundreds of millions of lives.
Yeah,
and it took almost no time. Albert Einstein came up with his theory of relativity, the first one anyway, the special theory, in 1905. It took him about 3 weeks. Obviously, he'd been thinking about it for some time before, but nevertheless, it was a small fraction of his lifetime. And the rest of his life, well, he did some good work, but it was nothing to compare to the miracle of 1905, the things he came up with then.
Well, I've got another example for your collection. Rock superstar Elton John. It takes him less than half an hour to write a hit song. I think he wrote Candle in the Wind in 24 minutes flat, one of the biggest hits of all time. Thinking of my viewers and listeners right now, Richard, in practical terms, when they are at work, perhaps on Monday, how might they be able to practice your innovative approach of 20% effort, 80% outcome?
What you need to do is to think about something that's going to have a big impact, that you come up with an idea. So, for example, a new product. A new product can make a huge difference to the sales and profits of any company. And it doesn't take a genius to come up with new products. I mean, people do it all the time. Most people come up with a new product, and if it's not their job, they shut up about it. And then 3 weeks later or 3 years later, the product is there. I mean, Airbnb, the whole idea of Airbnb or Uber or whatever, you know, you could have invented that. Your listeners, your viewers could have invented that.
Now,
It's just not. Yeah.
That's really great, and I definitely think I've got a very inventive audience. I've got no doubt there are great ideas there, and as you say, they should definitely, you know, pursue those. But what if you simply have a job that you quite like? You're an accountant, or you're a management consultant, or any kind of role that you've got. How can you make it more efficient? How can you reduce the effort to get a better result?
Well, one of my mentors was Bruce Henderson, who invented the Boston Consulting Group. And Bruce was a very queer fish in many ways. I can say this safely because he's dead. Don't worry, Mark. You're not going to get sued. And I knew Bruce a little bit. And the guy only cared about ideas. And he would sit in his office and sort of, you know, he would sort of doodle on a piece of paper and he would think. And then he came up with the theory of strategy, which I won't go into the theory of strategy because that would take too long. But basically, that has changed the whole way that American business and later the whole world's business is organized. It took him probably 2 years, one person, no other people involved. As a result of that, Boston Consulting Group became a hugely valuable company. But much more important than that, the companies that they consulted to and all the other people they didn't consult to, but who actually got hold of the ideas of strategy, the importance of relative market share and so on, you know, they have benefited enormously. And you've benefited. You've benefited in terms of if you own any shares or if you have a pension fund. And you've also benefited because goods have become cheaper as a result of that. So, you know, a huge benefit, very small amount of time, one management consultant who'd been fired consecutively in the previous 2 or 3 years because he was no good, or at least he was too awkward, a very difficult person. So if you're listening to this and you're an awkward person, rejoice, because it may be your turn soon.
Only a few seconds left. The new book is out. It's winning rave reviews, Unreasonable Success and How to Achieve It. If there's one important thing we need to know about that book, what would it be?
Self-belief is the most important cause of success. It's not ability. It's not hard work. It's a belief that you have in yourself. And if you really believe in yourself, it doesn't matter, almost doesn't matter if you're no good, you're going to win.
Richard, you've inspired me and my many viewers and listeners. Thank you to Richard Koch. Let me tell you that his latest book is Unreasonable Success and How to Achieve It, Unlocking the 9 Secrets of People Who Changed the World. His other book is The 80-20 Principle, The Secret to Achieving More with Less. Both books are out now. Grab a copy. It might just change your life. Well, we are just a few minutes away from my take at 10. You don't have to wait for the judge. I'll be giving my verdict on Prince Harry's needless war against the British press. I won't be pulling my punches. He's going down.
First and foremost, I'm a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the people's channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me.
So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners on TV, radio and online. This is GB News. Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There'll be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's 10 o'clock on television, on radio and online in the United Kingdom, a very hot and toasty United Kingdom and across the world. This is Mark Dolan Tonight. In my take at 10, you don't have to wait for the judge. I'll be giving my verdict on Prince Harry's needless war against the British press. I won't be pulling my punches, folks. He's going down. Also, does Donald Trump really face 100 years in jail? I'll be asking tonight's newsmaker, the Queen of US showbiz, royal and political reporting, Kinsey Schofield. And Mark Dolan Tonight is the home of the papers, with tomorrow's front pages from exactly 10:30 sharp. Plus, more from my top pundits as they name their back page heroes and backstage zeros. It's going to be a cracking hour. I'll be dealing with Prince Harry in just a couple of minutes' time. I'm not pulling my punches, but first, the headlines with Aaron Armstrong.
Very good evening to you from the GB Newsroom. The Prime Minister is facing a further challenge to his leadership after a second ally of Boris Johnson's resigned. Nigel Adams, the MP for Selby and Ainsty in North Yorkshire, has stood down with immediate effect, triggering a third by-election in 24 hours. His decision follows that of Johnson and Nadine Dorries yesterday, and it's led to calls for a general election. The committee investigating whether the former Prime Minister misled Parliament has promised to publish its report promptly. The shadow deputy leader, Angela Rayner, says it's clear Johnson lied.
Privileges Committee, a well-respected committee that are made up majority of Tory MPs, and he's just tried to trash them and say, I've got no responsibility, I've done nothing wrong. He's a man that can never hold his hands up to what he's done, and I think it's an absolute disgrace, and, you know, good riddance. He shouldn't have been in Parliament in the first place.
Former US President Donald Trump says he's the victim of a politically motivated witch hunt to keep him from the White House. Speaking at Georgia's state Republican convention, Trump alleged President Joe Biden orchestrated the criminal charges against him, describing the federal indictment as ridiculous and baseless. The former president is facing 37 felony counts in connection with the hoarding of classified documents at his Florida home.
They've launched one hoax and witch hunt after another to try and stop our movement and thwart the will of the American people. Every time not even believable. Witch hunt, scam, hoax. It's called election interference, and they're doing the best they can with it.
A 16-year-old boy has been charged with 2 counts of attempted murder and 1 count of GBH after an attack at a private school in Devon. Police who were called to Blundell School in Tiverton around 1 o'clock yesterday morning say 3 people, including 2 students, sustained multiple serious injuries. One boy's in a critical condition. The other is said to be serious but stable. A second man's been arrested in connection with the disappearance of a woman in County Antrim. 21-year-old Chloe Mitchell was last seen in Ballymena a week ago. Around 80 volunteers with the Community Service Rescue have been involved in a major search of the area, with teams concentrating on the banks of the River Braid. A 34-year-old is now being questioned after a 26-year-old man was arrested in Lurgan on Thursday. And some night for Manchester City, because in the last few minutes they have won the Champions League final for the first time, beating Inter Milan 1-0 in Istanbul. And these were the scenes at a fan park in Manchester when Rodri put City in front in the second half. It was the only goal of the game. They held on, and they have become just the second English team to complete an historic treble after Manchester United in 1999, adding the European title to the Premier League and the FA Cup. And there'll be scenes on the streets of Istanbul tonight. That's it for the moment. Now, it's back to Mark.
Welcome to Mark Dolan Tonight. Still to come in what's going to be a very busy hour. Does Donald Trump really face 100 years in jail? I'll be asking tonight's newsmaker, the Queen of US showbiz, royal and political reporting, Kinsey Schofield. Mark Dolan Tonight is the home of the papers, with tomorrow's front pages from 10:30. Plus, we'll have tonight's headline heroes and back page zeros. And following Aaron's announcement there, congratulations to Man City. Now, I'm very divided because I'm a Spurs fan, so I haven't got skin in the game. Plus, I've got a lot of viewers and listeners in Manchester, Greater Manchester, who love United. Of course, that is a city and an area split down the middle. But what I will say is I always back the British team. So congratulations to City, beating the Italians and winning the Champions League for the first time. OK, folks, a mood of celebration. The weather's great. Crack open a beer and let's get started. And we'll begin with my take at 10. Britain's least happy millionaire strikes again. Depressed aristocrat Prince Harry enjoys his day in court, squandering the millions from Netflix and HarperCollins earned by chucking his family and his country under the bus. How ironic that he should now, in this extraordinarily arrogant legal action, chuck himself under the bus. Coincidentally, the only exciting thing that happened this week was former East 17 star Brian Harvey protesting outside the courtroom. Harvey, famous for leaping out of a car whilst he was driving it. There's a metaphor about Prince Harry in there somewhere. What does his missus think of all this? Z-list actor turned presidential wannabe Woko Mono herself, Meghan Markle. Well, she's been very quiet, suggesting that she may not approve of this court case. Do me a favour. This lad doesn't blow his own nose without her permission. It's not so much a marriage as a hostage situation. True to form, he's already back in California after 3 nights in the UK, which we're told involved no visit to King Charles or Prince William. Imagine flying across the Atlantic and not meeting your brother and your old man. Well, let's not forget, he wouldn't even stick around for a pint and a couple of sandwiches after the King's coronation. So what do you really expect? And apparently it was his last night in Frogmore Cottage, the expensively decorated mansion bestowed on Harry and Meghan upon their marriage. Our wonderfully dynamic and no-nonsense king has evicted the couple from Frogmore. Yes, that's right, he's told them to hop off. The Mirror Group are under investigation over 140 articles written about Prince Harry between 1996 and 2010. Blimey, no wonder their sales are down. What we've seen in this needless 3-day case, using up lawyer time, which should be spent convicting criminals rather than settling scores, is 3 days of victimhood and arrogance from the fifth in line to the throne. The decision to pursue this case at enormous expense, which means there are going to have to be yet more TV shows and books to pay for it, has echoes of Prince Andrew's disastrous decision to do a Newsnight interview with the BBC's eye-roller-in-chief, Emily Maitlis. Andrew thought he could style this one out, buoyed by his own self-confidence and air of entitlement. But it was his weak story and shaky grasp of the facts that saw his reputation destroyed. Now, Harry may not have sweated as much as Randy Andy this week, but his grasp on reality looks to be as slender as his creepy uncle's. He accuses my old mate Piers Morgan of injecting details into stories about him, and he's suspicious about how they were acquired. Listen, I'm no Kelvin Mackenzie, but I can answer that one quite easily. Sources. It's called journalism, Harry. They tried to throw shade at Morgan, saying he took a really genuine interest in the coverage of Harry. Well, yes, that's not surprising. He was the editor of the paper, and it was a big story. But this isn't a big story anymore. It's a sob story. And I'm bored to tears by both of these chancers, Harry and Meghan, banging on about how terrible their life is, with Harry attacking the free press of this country, who he claims have had it in for him since day one. He said, "I've experienced hostility from the press since I was born." This from a professional crybaby. So what would that hostility look like, Harry? The media's overwhelmingly positive response to the arrival of Meghan Markle all those years ago, when they thought they had their new Diana, and the slavishly positive coverage of your wedding watched by billions around the world, was that the hostility? Celebrated by papers like The Express, who wrote "So in love," a magically modern wedding, opined the Mail. And the Mail on Sunday really put the boot in with "Harry ever after." Hostile indeed. At regular intervals, Harry looked like he was completely out of his depth, trying to convince the judge that this academic lightweight who managed an impressive D in geography at A-level was the exclusive author of his deposition and not his well-paid lawyers. Of course, I have no reason to doubt him. If any of the newspapers he's suing did hack his phone or broke the law in any way, then their punishment should be robust. It's completely unacceptable. But in my view, Harry's testimony is based upon feelings, innuendo, hearsay and hot air. For example, his phone was hacked 2 years before he owned a mobile phone. Or maybe it was his dad's phone. Who knows in this crazy parallel universe that Harry inhabits? And of course, this case has allowed Harry to participate in his favourite sport, not polo, the blame game. All of his problems are someone else's fault, including the fact that he split up with his then-girlfriend Chelsea Davy. You do have to wonder, don't you, how different things would have been if those two had, in the end, tied the knot. As a fan of West London, I've enjoyed many a night in Chelsea, and I can see the attraction. This legal action is a waste of time, energy and money. In terms of needless court action, Prince Harry is the new Rebecca Vardy. Although miserable, self-pitying Harry is no wag. Case dismissed, Your Honour. Send him down. That was louder than I expected. I'm sorry if I woke you up. Reacting to my take at 10 tonight, comedians Sajila Kershi, author and campaigner for Children in Care, Chris Wilde, reality star and entrepreneur, Aisling Horgan-Wallace. Chris Wilde, your reaction to what I believe to be Harry's needless court action against the British press?
Mark, leave him alone. Look, if there's going to be a movie about his name, it'd be In the Pursuit of Justice. Live and let live. I just think, you know, everything he's been through, I think we're really harsh on this poor kid, and I think we've just got to give the guy a break. Live and let live. That's my response.
But how can we be harsh on a kid that spends so much time attacking his own family, attacking his own country?
Yeah,
He's the author of all of this, Chris.
But come on, Mark. Look what he's been through. Look what he went through as a child. Look what he's gone through. Everything the media's done to him.
Unimaginable wealth, privilege.
Well, come on, we can't use that as an example, Mark. That little bit of money, you know, he's entitled, like the rest of us, to fight, to be. Do you know what? I'm going to be honest with you. I find it quite chivalrous. I think he's doing a great thing.
OK, well, Aisling, what do you think? What did you make of his testimony this week?
I haven't seen enough of it. I loved your monologue, but I am a Harry fan. I do feel sorry for him, and I think that we always have to think back to what happened with his mum, and this is why he's so passionate and anti-press. But also the fact that there is actually 100 other celebrities that this case involves, and it's not just Harry.
Good point.
You know, there are 5 others up there. And then if they win their cases, then the rest will be paid off. So I think that's a point that we need to remember, and it's not just Harry.
Full disclosure, I was not hacked, and I'm absolutely gutted because I really need a new conservatory.
I might have been, so...
Well, there you go. Listen, call a lawyer.
Exactly.
No
I
win,
didn't
no
want to pay
fee.
for the lawyer.
Sajila, I think that this court action against our free press was a huge mistake. What's your view?
Well, firstly, can I just say that was hilarious monologue. I mean, you are still comedian beyond compare. I was really laughing. But I have to say, I do feel sorry for the guy. The thing is, he comes from a very different world. And it's like, you know, when mermaids come into land, so it's like they inhabit a different kingdom, and he's trying to work out how humans live. He doesn't realise you need receipts when you go to court or when you complain about anything. And, like, you know, he hasn't got any. And I really do feel genuine. I mean, you know, people say, oh, he's doing it for Meghan. He's not. I think he's still doing it for his mother.
I think his mum as well, but he is under control by Meghan. 100%.
Yeah, but he's doing this because he's still got this kind of vendetta against the press because of his mum, which you can completely understand. And I'll be honest, I really worry about his mental health. If he was breaking down in court, I don't want to see him do anything silly. So I have to say, I do feel
I agree. I totally agree. I agree with you, yeah.
But I did think your monologue was very funny, very funny.
All right, well, look, I think that his court action is no laughing matter. What's your reaction? Do you agree or disagree with my excellent pundits tonight? Mark at gbnews.com. On Twitter, I asked, are weather warnings important, or is it an example of the nanny state? Do we still need warnings that it's going to be hot this weekend? We'll give you the results of that text poll next, plus the papers at 10:30 sharp. But next up, is the remarkable and redoubtable Donald Trump about to spend 100 years in jail? We'll find out after this.
Earlier on GB News Radio.
It's marrying you that's aged me. Anyway, let's cross now to parliamentary sketch writer Quentin Letts. What do you make of all that? I mean, presumably, Boris Johnson and Nadine Dorries no longer being in the House of Commons is going to make your job an awful lot harder, isn't it?
Oh, well, the good Lord provideth always there'll be some more along. This is for drama, simply on drama. This is like the Heseltine resignation in 1980.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, no, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better.
Crop failures, famine, war, suffering on a scale completely unimaginable.
We are putting the cart before the horse. As Charles I said at the scaffold, he was the true defender of liberty.
Yeah, I've completely derailed the conversation.
Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real, robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
So, before the show, in a Mark Dolan Tonight People's poll, I've been asking, are weather warnings important, or is this the hand of the nanny state? Do we need to be treated like children? 19.4% say yes, they are necessary. 80.6% say absolutely not. It's the nanny state gone mad. I got to say, look, Marky, the producer, doesn't have time for emails, but let me just quickly do this one, Mark, and it's from Glenys. People are such babies complaining about work conditions. They need to grow a backbone and get on with it. If you're too cold, put an extra layer on. If you're too hot, drink plenty of water to cool down. Glenys, thank you for that burst of common sense. More of your emails shortly, but it's time now for the Newsmaker. And this evening, as always on a Saturday, the Queen of US showbiz, royal and political reporting, Kinsey Schofield. And Kinsey, Donald Trump, according to the Mail newspaper, faces 100 years in jail. Is this a genuine possibility?
You know, this is a tough one because, you know, I have to reference my notes, but a friend of your program, Alan Dershowitz, during the Stormy Daniels indictment, he said that it was politically motivated and very much sided with Trump. He said he'd never vote for him, but he felt like the Stormy Daniels incident was really a nothing burger. However, in this particular case, he says that the indictment cites a tape recording where the president allegedly brags to an unnamed person about classified secret information in a document about Iran. And I think that there is a little bit of concern in this particular situation for the former president.
Indeed. Do you think his dream of returning to the White House is starting to slip from his grasp?
I do think that that's the objective. You know, I don't think it's any coincidence that hours before this indictment was announced, Trump and his colleagues were granted access to that document alleging that Joe Biden and Hunter Biden had received a $5 million bribe from a Ukrainian energy company. So I do believe that the objective is to create so much chaos around the former president that it's nearly impossible for him to be the Republican candidate.
Has he genuinely done wrong, do you think? Is there a case to answer, or does this feel like a political hatchet job?
Yeah, you know, Mark, I think you'd have to look at Joe Biden. Joe Biden is accused of something very similar, classified documents found in his home, yet Joe Biden and his team have not been interviewed or questioned whatsoever about that incident yet. It does feel like there are rules for certain people that others don't have to follow in this particular case.
Are Mr. Trump's supporters angry about this?
Absolutely. And like you said, they truly feel like it's politically motivated. And similar with Boris Johnson, I feel like these are two people that have created such energy around them, have created such, true support around their leadership that it's pretty hard to get people to turn away from them.
Yes, for sure. Look, I'm afraid it seems like the political civil war in America continues apace, this time played out in the courts. Can we talk about the celebrations here in the UK? There's a lot happening, including soldiers, I think, rehearsing for a parade in the heat. I believe we might have some footage of this. Let's take a look. I think it's Horse Guards Parade, and it's pretty alarming stuff. You'll see one particular soldier there being stretchered off at the back of the picture. It was about 30 degrees in central London today. Let's keep these pictures going if we can, Mark. And Kinsey, just tell me, do you think that parades in the heat are unfair?
You know, I've heard this conversation throughout your show about weather and should we be warned and should we even be allowed outside? I mean, the idea of that, just take your pants off if it's too hot. In this particular case, they are clearly not able to do that. I think that first of all, I'm a junior Dallas Cowboy cheerleader, Mark, and in Dallas, Texas, it gets pretty hot during the summertime, and I remember passing out during rehearsals. So I think that it just is something that comes with the territory. We need to stay hydrated, mentally prepared. I remember there was something we wore under our uniform that we soaked in water and froze. So I just feel like this is something we should be prepared for, but it just comes with the territory. These people I hope that they're safe. I hope that they are okay. And the reality is they probably are. They probably were just dehydrated.
Yes, and we are a bunch of lightweights in this country. If you talk about the kind of heat you get in the United States, especially down south, then it's hardly comparable. However, we do wish those wonderful soldiers well in their recovery. Hope they're feeling better, probably suffering a slight headache tonight. Can we talk about a snub for Prince Harry? What's happened?
That's right. This is all in preparation. That parade is for next weekend's big event, Trooping of the Colour. This is the King's big celebration. We saw Harry and Meghan at the last one for the Queen. You know, I don't remember. I don't know if you remember those tight-lensed photographs of them kind of peeking through the window, talking to some of the kids. And this year, allegedly, according to the Daily Mail, Harry and Meghan were not invited to come partake in the celebration. I think, listening to your big opinion, that Harry has probably embarrassed his family over the last week. I don't think that it's done them any favors to rehash some of these and open up some of these old wounds. And I do think it gives us a bit of a glimpse into the relationship Harry currently has with his father, which is a distanced one.
Indeed, it's a really sad story, isn't it? Quite shocking that Prince Harry got political and said that the government had reached rock bottom, another embarrassment for the king. Briefly, Kinsey, I believe, though, that Harry's in generous form, in a generous mood. What's he been up to this week?
I don't hate this story. I kind of love it. On the way home, Harry took an overnight flight, a public overnight flight. I imagine that the flight attendant acknowledged him, probably was a fan, and Harry gifted him a copy of Spare. I know it should be cringe, but I thought it was really kind of sweet that obviously the flight attendant had some sort of conversation with him, was kind to him, and in return, when Harry got off the plane, he'd left him a copy of Spare. So I think it's a sweet story. I know people are going to be mad at me about it, but good for him.
No, I think it's generous. I love the book. It's an excellent doorstop. I've got a bedroom door that just won't stay open. And it's the sheer amount of nonsense in that book, Spare, that really holds the door shut. Listen, Kinsey, we'll catch up in a week's time. I know you're coming to London in a couple of weeks. Can't wait for that. The Queen of US showbiz royal and political reporting, Kinsey Schofield. Kinsey?
See you next week.
Is it next week?
Yes.
Fantastic news. We'll see you in 7 days' time. Looking forward to that, and live in the studio as well. You won't want to miss it. Next up, we've got the papers with full pundit reaction. Don't go anywhere.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things. We've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference. And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton Tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat.
Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News. The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
GB News.
The People's...
Listen, I've broken. I'm having a drink because we are dying with heat. Listen, it's too hot, isn't it? Is it too hot? Mark at gbnews.com. We shouldn't complain about the good weather because we have been waiting a long time for it. The great British summer has begun, so cheers one and all. And let's do this. Yes, indeed, it's tomorrow's papers, hot off the press, and we will start, I think, with the Sunday Times. And let's see what they are splashing with. Actually, we've got the Independent first, and the Independent lead with Tories in turmoil as bitter Boris allies force a third by-election. Rishi Sunak faces a third by-election after another close Boris Johnson ally quit the Commons today in an apparent revenge attack aimed at creating chaos for the PM. Capping a tumultuous 24 hours, Nigel Adams, the MP for Selby and Ainsty, announced that he was following the former PM and Nadine Dorries in quitting Parliament with immediate effect. This looks like an organised pincer movement against Rishi Sunak. OK, Sunday Times now. Wuhan scientists created mutant virus before pandemic. There's a surprise. Allies abandon Johnson as Tory mutiny falls flat. Rishi Sunak, says Caroline Wheeler and Tim Shipman in the Sunday Times, appears to have faced down a rebellion orchestrated by Boris Johnson, whose fury was threatening to propel the Conservative Party into civil war. Johnson resigned as an MP yesterday over Partygate and the honours list, launching a blistering attack on the government. However, sources close to Johnson claimed that up to 6 more Conservative MPs would stand down, but a number of his supporters quickly ruled themselves out of any coordinated plot. Was this the coup that never was? Passing out parade, covering that story we discussed with Kinsey Schofield just now. A guardsman faints in the 30-degree heat of Horse Guards parade during practice for next weekend's Trooping of the Colours ceremony. Temperatures are expected to be cooler next weekend, which is a blessing for those guardsmen. Also, NHS wants cancer advice labels on underwear. Let's have a look at that one. The NHS is in talks with supermarkets about putting advice on underwear labels and lavatory rolls, urging people to check for the most common symptoms of cancer. Tesco is among the chains in early discussions with the NHS about life-saving proposals. The labels would tell customers how to check for the signs of cervical, bowel and other cancers. The scheme is expected to be introduced as part of plans to improve early diagnosis rates. Trebles no trouble for Man City as they win the Champions League. And The Observer, who lead with furious Tories turn against Johnson after bias outburst. Rishi Sunak is under growing pressure to bar Boris Johnson from standing as a Conservative candidate at the next election. As senior Tories accuse the former PM and his allies of a coordinated attempt to derail the government amid anger at Johnson within the party over his explosive departure, in which he said he was only leaving Westminster for now, and accused a cross-party committee of egregious bias. There's now a concerted push among senior Tories to ensure Johnson has no route back to the Commons for the foreseeable future. One senior member of the 1922 Committee of Tory backbenchers said it was very clear, the view amongst colleagues, that he should be blocked from standing at the next election. The pantomime has to end. He has to be stopped by whatever means, and the sooner the better, said this senior figure. History makers. Rodri celebrates scoring for Man City to win the Champions League against Inter in Istanbul tonight. The victory completes a historic treble after they won the Premier League and the FA Cup. Well done, City. Well done, Pep Guardiola. Those are your front pages. Reaction to them from comedian Sajila Kershi, author and campaigner for Children in Care Chris Wilde, and broadcaster, socialite, media influencer and woman about town Ashleen Horgan-Wallace. Folks, lots of stories to get through.
Yeah.
Can we start with this cancer story? NHS wants cancer advice labels on underwear. Isn't that overkill, Chris?
No, I think it's a genius idea, and I think as I get into I'm 43 now, and I think I have some friends who've got bowel cancer, and it's these little signs. I think we are a nation of kind of private. We don't talk about stuff like this, and I've spoke to friends about, how do you know if you've got bowel cancer? What are the signs? So I think something like this is a genius. I think we should have done it a long time ago. It's life-saving, Mark. I think it really is life-saving. I don't think it's when we hear stuff like this, these little nuances, these little trivial ideas, but they have such a big impact on everybody's lives. And I've lost somebody from bowel cancer, so I know how that feels. And then, a friend of mine who had cancer recently, I said, how do you know? Because nobody wants to go into the toilet after you've been to the toilet and be checking your stool. It's an embarrassing thing, isn't it? If something's not right down in that area. So I think this is brilliant. Great for the NHS to really take a move on this. And it will have a huge impact. And it will cost... it will save so many people's lives, I think, Mark. I think it's brilliant. I think it's a great idea.
Yeah. Well, what about customers that don't want a nanny state label on their undies?
Well, the thing is, on bikini bottoms, they put, like, a little sticky thing anyway. And so instead of writing down, just keep this on when you... It could just have instructions of what you should do to be looking for.
Can I just say,
I don't mind that.
No, by the way, I don't like that sticky thing on the bikini bottom. I find it really
You put it the wrong way round, you get a complimentary wax.
It's a little bit sweaty. Ashleen, do we need health labels on underwear?
I think it's a great idea. I'm with you on it. I think it's, there's nothing wrong with it. I just wonder how big the printing is going to be, because that's the logistics
glasses
problem.
on.
Yeah. And also, I better start wearing more underwear so I can read the signs.
I think that sounds like a very wise idea. Talk about reading the signs, by the way. And Sajila, this one really caught my eye in The Observer. Furious Tories turn against Johnson after bias outburst. And the Sunday Times, allies abandon Johnson as Tory mutiny falls flat. Do you think this was the coup that never was?
Of course it was the coup that never was. He brought this on himself. I'm sorry, but what did he expect? He's completely betrayed the party. It's selfish motives. Him and Nadine Dorries, I'm sorry, resigning. And then the third person who's like a nobody, nobody noticed that he's resigned, someone called Nigel. No one's making any plans for Nigel.
Listen, there are lots of very important people called Nigel around here.
But no one's making any plans for
Nigel Adams, former Cabinet Office Minister.
Yeah,
and his mother loves
it's
him.
like, so what? You've resigned, but what you've done is you've let the people that voted for you down. You've actually created more chaos. I agree with you what you said earlier about the chaos. We don't need any more chaos, so of course they're angry. You know, this is ridiculous.
It is a circus. The whole thing is just a circus, but we need to remember the good that he's done as well. It's not just all been bad, and I do feel like he's being bullied out. I really do.
Yes, I mean, there is talk, Aisling, there is talk of a breakaway party. Do you think a lot of people would vote for a centre-right party led by Boris Johnson?
I absolutely think that they would, because through speaking to friends, he's secretly loved. It's like you're not allowed to admit it, but people do love him.
You know, it's like Phil Collins, Boris Johnson.
You know what? Geographically as well, you know, coming from Yorkshire, it's very much a Labourite kind of place. And even going back up to Halifax and Yorkshire, and you're thinking, a lot of people are really behind him, you know. And it's like, what, you've been through all that austerity, you've been through everything what the Conservative Party put you through in the 80s and the 90s, but they still get the Conservative vote there. And they love Boris.
I think they see him as a massive threat, because why else would you want to ban him from trying to come back?
It's a fair point. Some good emails coming in on this. Stephen says, good evening, Mark. No doubt Boris Johnson is a character that has won over the hearts of many ladies who want a child with him. However, However, a Prime Minister who misleads the House, the public and themselves cannot be trusted at the level required for a country's leader. And I thought this one was interesting from Graham. Hi, Mark. First and foremost, I believe Boris Johnson was the best statesman Britain has had since Margaret Thatcher. That said, he recklessly squandered the public support they showered upon him. I always looked upon Boris as Britain's first president, and remember thinking when he achieved his mammoth 80-seat majority, Britain wouldn't be too bad if it did have a president. He and he alone is the architect of his own downfall. And regarding COVID lockdowns, I caught COVID during the first month of the government announcing it had entered the UK, says Graham. I treated myself by taking large quantities of ginger, and within 5 days, my immune system had rid COVID from my body. Neither have I had any COVID vaccines. You complain about the government's actions over COVID, but never sought any solution yourself to combat the virus. So in that respect, you willingly complied with the government directive. Now you complain. Your complaints sound hypocritical. Graham, thank you for that. Listen, a bit of tough love from my viewers.
Graham with a...
Listen, this is the show where the host is comfortable with a bit of pushback. Comfortable with a bit of criticism. I don't storm off. I take it. And actually, you know, I mean, nobody has successfully explained to me why, given that the vaccine didn't stop infection or transmission, why we did vaccinate healthy people. But there you go. I await an answer. Chris Whitty, you know the email, mark@gbnews.com. Let's have a look now at a couple of other stories which I think we need to sink our teeth into. Actually, a quick one on COVID. And this, Sajila, in the Sunday Times, Wuhan scientists created mutant virus before the pandemic. Do we need these laboratories that create viruses?
No, we don't. Why are they creating... Have we watched enough films? I mean, it all goes horribly wrong. It always, like, spreads. I mean, and then we have to... We've lived the film. Like, stop creating mutant things in laboratories. Spend your time finding cures for cancer and more, you know, important things.
Yeah, and you've got a good point. Listen, we've got to be quite serious about this as well. And it's like creating stuff like this is just like creating nuclear weapons. It is. And it's destroying it, and it affects so many people's mental health. Knowing that's actually happening bothers me as well.
I think it seems utterly insane, and it's very worrying that it may have been partly American money that funded the Wuhan lab that was working with prototype viruses, including potentially COVID-19.
Wow.
I think, can we safely put to bed the wet market theory now? That's dead in the water, isn't it?
It's a Hollywood movie fiction kind of synopsis. I think it's dead in the water. Yeah.
I think it is. Man City have won the Champions League. Is British sport the best in the world?
Yes.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
Yeah.
I mean, it's great news for the country. I've got
we
viewers,
lose beautifully.
I've got viewers and
football.
listeners on the red half of Manchester who won't be happy tonight.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I always back the British team, so I'm pleased for them. What do you think?
I think it's great. I think in times of uncertainty, sport always rescues us, brings us together. There's a solidarity there, there's a unity, and I think we are the best at doing that as well. I think all of the countries, everything what's going on in the world, football brings our country in particular together.
Yeah. I've got friends all over the world, and one thing that they ask me about all the time is our football, because that's how it reaches all across the world, globally. Yeah. We've got a real good reputation.
And Manchester is the place to be tonight?
Yeah.
So to say.
It'll be a hot night, and it ain't going to end, is it?
Manchester's going to be rocking tonight.
Yeah.
That's where the party is tonight.
Let's get a train up there, guys. After the
let's
show.
do it.
Yeah, exactly. I think we probably should. So brilliant stuff. Look, lots more to come. Very excited about hearing my pundits' nominations for front page heroes and back page zeros. Plus, we've got the Telegraph, the Mirror, and the Sun. All of that to come. See you in 2.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me.
So anyway,
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage. Here on GB News, we will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News. Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There'll be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Listen, lots of emails coming in thick and fast. Regarding Man City, congratulations to Man City for winning the Champions League. I think it's great news for British football. David is not so sure. David says, Mark, Man City are not a British team. They are all foreign imports. Also, Anne is not happy. Anne says, as a woman, I cannot celebrate a team financed by Saudi money where my sex is treated like dirt. Hypocrisy of football in all its glory. Thank you for that, Annie. It's all about opinions. But as I said earlier, I always back the British team, whoever it is. I say whoever. Arsenal, not so much. I'm in trouble with Ashleen now. There you go. I got my wrist slapped. Regarding COVID, I've had all my shots. I didn't get COVID-19, says Jeff. And correct, says Neil. Boris Johnson is the best since Thatcher. End of. Brilliant stuff. Look, I'll get to more of your emails shortly, but we've got more front pages. The Telegraph is in, hot off the press. Johnson orchestrates attack on PM over swindle. Boris Johnson and his allies have launched a coordinated attack on Rishi Sunak's administration, threatening more parliamentary resignations after the PM's dishonourable failure to back him on Partygate and his honours list. A source close to Johnson said the 3 by-elections triggered by the resignations of the former Prime Minister Nadine Dorries and Nigel Adams were an attempt to damage Mr Sunak after a bitter falling out that followed secret talks between the pair 9 days ago. 2 further allies of Mr Johnson were claimed to be on resignation watch, including a 2019 intake MP. Also, City tycoon Crispin Odey has been ousted over sex pest allegations. Glad to hear it's not only Westminster. And BBC recruiting to curb liberal bias. The BBC is examining ways it can ensure new recruits have diverse opinions after repeated claims of a liberal bias among presenters and off-screen staff. Senior figures, including Tim Davie, the BBC's Director General, have been holding talks on changes that could be made to the corporation's recruitment process to ensure it's hiring staff with a wide range of views and perspectives. The move is highly unusual because it goes significantly beyond a past focus simply on the views of on-screen presenters who have faced accusations of bias. City clinched the treble is the other headline in The Telegraph. And last but not least for now, we go to The Sun. And it's The Sun on Sunday, of course. 3 Menges indeed. Champions League final, Man City won, Inter 0. They won it by a whisker, I've got to say. And also, exclusive United ace shock. Marcus love split. Marcus Rashford and his fiancée Lucia are to break up. And I think we've got the Mirror as well, so let's have a look at tomorrow's Mirror. It's the Sunday Mirror, and we lead in the Sunday Mirror with General Election Now. Starmer's message to Sunak. Well, let's put that to my top pundits tonight. Comedian Sajila Kershi, author and campaigner for Children in Care Chris Wilde, and reality star and entrepreneur Ashleen Horgan-Wallace. A general election now. What do you think, Ashleen? Do we need one?
No, absolutely not. Like, can we just get on with running the country? We've got enough problems without creating new ones. It's just a drama. It's just a circus.
Do you think that Rishi Sunak can ride this storm out?
I hope so, because I do think that he's the right man for the job. I think he's just, you know, his personality is nothing like Boris Johnson's, but I think that that's what we need. I think you mentioned it earlier. He gets on with the job and focuses just on the job, and that's what we need right now.
Chris Wilde, you're shaking your head. Yeah. You think it's curtains for Sunak?
It's curtains, yeah, absolutely. And I just think it's... The country's at a state at the moment where, it doesn't matter if you bring in a great leader, somebody who can lead them into the next general election. It's just not going to happen. So much scandals happen with the Conservative Party, but people have lost hope, they've lost the trust. And Rishi in particular, listen, I say this, but I think Rishi and Boris, they're both peas in the pod. They're both as bad as each other. And I don't trust them. If any one of them two told me it was raining outside, I'd have to go to the window and check.
I think that's any politician, though.
Yeah, but is flip-flop Starmer any better?
Listen, I hold my hands up. I'm a Labour voter. I've got hope. But the thing is, what...
Do you rate Starmer as a Labour supporter?
I don't. I'm going to be careful here. I don't rate him. I wish it was more Angela-led than him. But he's... But what else do we have? We don't have anyone else better at the moment to lead. Definitely he's better than Jeremy Corbyn. I wouldn't...
That's why let Rishi get on with his job.
But between Rishi and him, they're very similar. They're both, left and right, they're both more or less centre in their politics. But I favour him right now. I favour Keir over Rishi, and that's where my confidence is, yeah.
Sajila, general election now?
No, because for the very reasons, the weaknesses in Labour right now, and I am a Labour, and it is weak, and then they need to get that strength back within...
What are those weaknesses?
Well,
Labour.
Starmer.
Division politics.
And also...
the Green U-turn this week, 28 billion we're going to spend every year.
Do you know what? I think he has got the ability to be a great leader. He just needs to get grow a pair, really, and just stand by what he stands by. We don't know what he stands by. But I think it's over for Tories. It should be a home run now. But actually, it's a shame because I think Rishi has been sabotaged by his own party. And it's become.
But they've sabotaged themselves. I mean, they've done it to themselves. And
yeah, they have. I absolutely agree. But it's like if you had you've got one good egg that might be able to bring the. And I'm not supporting Tories. I'm just saying, but they're not. This is such a infighting. It's horrible civil war.
Speaking in quite warm terms about Rishi Sunak, do you think he's somebody that the floating voters might look kindly on?
He just reminds me of an uncle, so
But he's not hated, is he? He's not divisive.
He's not divisive. And I think...
Except by some Tories, but,
Yeah, by the Tories themselves, because, I mean, when it came to him and Lettuce, it's like, it was clear Liz was never going to,
Liz Lettuce.
I'm so sorry.
She'll never live that one down.
I'm so sorry. Liz, if you're watching, I apologise. But, yeah, I just think, I didn't call you that. That was, other people.
Star newspaper.
Yeah.
I don't think he knows what New Labour is. I think he's still stuck in Tony Blair's kind of policies as well. I think he's...
Who's Starmer?
Yeah, I think we need somebody kind of innovative who's got that kind of courage.
Maverick. We need a maverick.
A maverick, we do. But...
So you'd go for Angela Rayner, would you?
Yeah, I would. She's my favourite right now.
Okay.
And David Lammy, I love David Lammy. Why is
I love David Lammy. Where is David Lammy?
How much have you guys had to drink?
No, but David Lammy is
alcohol-free policy on this
I want
show.
David Lammy to be our leader.
David Lammy, tell me when the shuttle lands. Ashleen, you're actually thinking don't throw the towel in for the Tories just yet?
No, absolutely not. I think, give Rishi a chance. Give him a chance.
Give Peace a chance.
Give Rishi
give that multi-millionaire a chance. Let's give him a chance.
He just looks like, for me, he looks like the best candidate for the job right now. Because
give him a
chance. You both yourself said, your guy's not up for the job.
No, they will be by this time next year.
Yeah,
they will be.
Exactly. So give Rishi.
No, Rishi's
Well, listen, my pundits don't agree. That's the point of the show. We'll get to more of their thoughts shortly. In fact, let's get their headline heroes and back page zeros now. And Sajila, who is smiling upon you today?
So my hero has got to be, they're calling him in France the backpack hero, and he fended off the assailants, that horrific attack.
Yeah.
Every parent's absolute nightmare in the playground in Annecy. Yeah. His name's Henri. That's all we know because all his socials just say Henri, and he's even sparked his own hashtag with hashtag Merci Henri.
Wow.
And Henri with the rucksack who was fending off this. And I love people like that, and I think there should be more people who just, fight or flight, get in there and help out.
Absolutely, a true hero. Briefly, if you can, Chris, your hero?
Yeah, my hero is Bill Murray, the actor, the Hollywood actor, who's, I think he's about 70-odd years old at the moment. And do you know why? Just briefly, quickly, he's living the best life. And I think we all should be a little bit like Bill Murray. He's going out there, just doing it. He turns up in all these different countries.
Got a young girlfriend.
He's got a young girlfriend who's going to go there. He's doing all right. And I love him. I think he inspires me to be old and enjoy getting old.
And he's got a comedy club named after him.
There you go. That would do it. Listen, Ashleen, your hero today.
Well, look, I've been on holiday for a week. I haven't read enough of the press, so just forgive me, but my hero is Boris, because for me, personally, I feel like he's standing up against the machine and standing up for himself, and I think he's been bullied, but he's talking about it with his chest, and I appreciate that.
You never have to apologise for expressing your view on this show. Briefly, just a couple of seconds, Sajila, your back page zero.
OK, I've got a double zero with the geopolitical blonde buffoons in Boris Johnson and Donald Trump, both of them victims of their own, their own doing, basically. And, and good riddance to both, actually.
OK, Chris, your back page zero?
Nadine, anywhere the wind blows, Norris.
Harsh, but some would say fair.
Yes.
Last but not least, Ashley, last but not least.
The cretin, the scumbag, the vile disgusting murderer that attacked the toddlers.
Yes.
Lock him up and throw away the key.
Yeah.
Agree.
Let me thank my amazing pundits tonight. Really enjoyed their company. And also thank you to you for your company, my amazing team as well, working in sweltering heat. Mark and Jonathan and Holly. Mescana stuck around as well. Couldn't do it without you. Keith, who was in the background. So listen, thanks to my team, but most importantly to you for your company. This show is nothing without you. I'll see you tomorrow at 9. And I'm delighted to say that Headliners is next.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, "Nah, stop arguing." I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different. Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better.
Crop failures, famine, war, suffering on a scale completely unimaginable.
We are putting the cart before the horse. As Charles I said at the scaffold, he was the true defender of liberty.
Yeah, I've completely derailed the conversation.
Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
The Jubes and Co, we tackle the issues of the day with real, robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Very good evening to you. It's Aaron Armstrong here at 11 o'clock in the GB Newsroom. We'll start with the Prime Minister, who is facing a further challenge to his leadership after a second ally of Boris Johnson has resigned. Nigel Adams, the MP for Selby and Ainsty in North Yorkshire, stood down with immediate effect, triggering a third by-election in 24 hours. His decision follows that of